Senator John Kennedy reorganized the pile of new classified documents on his wooden desk, the sound of paper cutting through the complete quiet of the chamber. He peered over his glasses at Ilhan Omar, who remained expressionless, aware that the story was out, but likely unaware of the depth of his information. Representative, prior to discussing foreign affairs, we must discuss the disaster that occurred at 4:52 this morning in your Minneapolis district. While you slept, 500 federal officers from the FBI and ICE were wide awake. They were storming the grounds of what was meant to be a governor's residence, but was actually the headquarters of a worldwide criminal syndicate. Omar adjusted her position, speaking sharply. "Senator, I cannot be held liable for a state governor's conduct, regardless of our shared political affiliation." Kennedy raised a palm, his tone lowering ominously. "This was not merely a police action, ma'am. It was a battlefield. Officers faced automatic weapon fire from 300 security personnel within a private home, military-level opposition in a Minneapolis suburb, protecting 6.7 tons of narcotics, sufficient to wipe out half the Midwest. But that is not the most damning detail, is it? The true horror lies in the finances. Authorities discovered $7.4 billion in cash concealed within the basement structure. $7.4 billion. Accumulating that volume of currency requires political shielding and powerful allies." Omar leaned toward her microphone. "This is guilt by association and falls below the standards of this committee." Kennedy did not flinch as he produced a photograph from his folder. "Let us discuss standards, then. Let us discuss Layla Osman, the courier detained yesterday with $230 million in her vehicle. Her travel records align mathematically with your official schedule. Whenever the governor conducted a private meeting, you were present in the district. Whenever a shipment cleared the docks using those 120 bribed officials, you were publicly criticizing the federal agencies attempting to intercept them. $41.7 billion moved through shell corporations tied to this ring while you lectured on justice. Is this your definition of justice? Poisoning our communities while shielding a Somali-American governor who used his office to protect trafficking?" Omar struck the table with her hand. "That is a fabrication and a slanderous falsehood meant to tarnish our community." Kennedy leaned in, his gaze icy. "The community is grieving, ma'am. Families are realizing their leaders betrayed them for illicit profits. We located the tunnels, Representative. We discovered the distribution hub under the garage and the messages citing federal protection. This was not simple criminality. It was treason embedded in the government. You expect us to accept that you were deaf and blind to the industrial operation in your district while you were busy attacking American police?" Omar's eyes flashed with anger. "I will not remain seated here to be accused of conspiracy without proof." Kennedy reclined, a grim smile appearing. "The proof is currently filling storage facilities. Tons of drugs crossed our borders because one man permitted it, and others turned a blind eye. However, this betrayal transcends money or narcotics. It touches the core of your service, leading to the question haunting this hearing. Representative Omar, if the United States and Somalia were to engage in war tomorrow, hypothetically, which side would you desire to win?" The question lingered like the smoke from a fired weapon. Senator Kennedy's Southern accent made it sound casual, yet everyone in the Foreign Relations Committee room knew this was the decisive blow. The silence was absolute, heavy enough to be felt physically. Ilhan Omar sat with her legal team, 3 lawyers in high-end suits. She had entered 2 hours prior with confidence and defiance. She had weathered partisan attacks before, facing accusations of terrorism and prejudice, always emerging stronger and more popular with her base. However, this situation was unique. This was not a partisan skirmish, but a simple binary choice between America and Somalia, and she could not answer. 10 seconds of silence turned into 15, then 20. The news cameras focused tightly on her expression. Millions were watching live as networks switched to the coverage. "That is an absurd hypothetical," she said, her voice carrying a defensive tone. Kennedy did not raise his volume. "It is a straightforward question, ma'am. Every citizen should be able to answer it instantly. Which side would you prefer to see victorious?" Another pause ensued. One could see her mind working, calculating the impossibility of a safe response. To say America would contradict years of rhetoric about her homeland, while saying Somalia would destroy her career. "I refuse to validate Islamophobic hypotheticals meant to test my loyalty." Kennedy raised a hand, his voice remaining gentle. "I have not mentioned your faith once in 2 hours. I asked about your allegiance to nations, not your religion. I asked which country you would support if forced to choose between America and Somalia. That concerns loyalty, not Islam." He lifted a document from his desk. "We possess recordings of you telling audiences that our homeland is under American attack. You stated our people back home require assistance. You have called Somalia home in the present tense 43 times recently. When you say home, which nation do you mean? I am allowed a complex identity. You may have any identity you wish, ma'am. You can cherish your heritage and culture, but you may only hold one allegiance in Congress. You swore an oath to the U.S. Constitution, not the Somali one. You cannot serve both. Therefore, once more, if America and Somalia went to war, who would you want to win?" The silence stretched to 30 seconds. It was the longest pause in recent congressional history. Then, an unexpected event occurred. A Somali-American woman in a hijab and suit stood up in the audience. "Just say America, Ilhan." Her voice cut clearly through the quiet room. "Why is it so hard to say America?" Omar turned, shock visible on her face. The audience was supposed to be supportive, filled with her community and activists. The woman spoke louder. "My family selected this country. We escaped Somalia because it failed us. We arrived here, took the citizenship oath, and we honored it. We declared America our home, not Somalia. Why cannot you state the same?" Omar opened her mouth, but remained silent, looking to her lawyers who offered no help. She looked back at Kennedy, who waited with a sad, knowing smile. Omar stood up, gathering her papers with trembling hands. "I will not sit here and partake in this racist spectacle." Kennedy's voice halted her, still calm. "Representative, you remain under oath. You cannot simply depart. Watch me." She began moving, her lawyers rushing to collect their files. "Ma'am, if you leave without answering, the audience will understand exactly what your silence implies." She paused at the exit, her voice shaking with emotion. "My response is that I owe no one proof of my loyalty. I took my oaths, and that must suffice." Kennedy leaned back. "The citizenship oath involves renouncing all foreign allegiance specifically. Yet you have not renounced allegiance to Somalia, have you? You still call it home and vote for its interests. The oath is insufficient if you fail to honor it." Omar did not reply, pushing through the doors. The room exploded with noise, flashes, and shouting reporters. Kennedy sat peacefully, stacking his papers, as if he had concluded a mundane meeting rather than dismantling a career on live TV. To understand this moment, one must look back 90 minutes to when Omar arrived, believing she would survive. Tuesday, February 3rd, 2026, Senate Hart Building. The room was packed with media and staff. The atmosphere charged. A ProPublica investigation 3 weeks prior had sparked the hearing. The headline read, "Congresswoman's Secret Coordination: How Ilhan Omar's office worked with Somali government to influence U.S. policy." The report was devastating, revealing phone logs, emails, and financial records. The pattern was undeniable. Omar would receive classified briefings, contact Somali officials within 48 hours, and then vote in alignment with Somali interests. The committee subpoenaed her to testify. At 9:45 a.m. she arrived. Omar was 43, a refugee success story who had become a polarizing political figure. She thrived on controversy, turning attacks into fundraising opportunities. She entered wearing purple, confident, and flanked by legal counsel. She believed this was just another partisan battle. She did not know Kennedy had spent 6 weeks preparing for something deeper than policy violations. In his office, his chief of staff had presented 3 boxes of evidence. Kennedy, a deceptive figure with an Oxford education hidden behind a folksy persona, had requested everything on her public statements. "What did you discover?" he asked. It is a consistent pattern. She identifies as Somali first. She uses we for Somalis and they for Americans. Kennedy read the transcripts, noting the specific language. "Our homeland is under attack," she had said in 2019. "We must help our brothers back home," she said in 2021. Kennedy noted she referred to Somalia as home 43 times, while never calling America home. He then requested her voting record. The team found a perfect correlation. In every vote regarding Somalia, she sided with the Somali government. She opposed sanctions on terrorists and oversight on aid. 12 times she voted against American interests. Most damning was the timing. Every vote occurred shortly after meetings with Somali officials. Kennedy noted the pattern was not coincidental. They then tracked the money. Campaign funds came from Somali government-linked groups, and her husband's firm received payments from Somali businesses. Kennedy built a 50-page binder of evidence. He planned not to accuse her of espionage, but to test her loyalty through her own answers. The hearing began at 10:00 a.m. Opening statements were standard political theater. Then Kennedy stood, taking his time. "Representative Omar, thank you for attending." His tone was conversational. "I acknowledge your remarkable story of the American dream." Omar softened, wondering where he was leading. "I believe in legal immigration and becoming American," Kennedy said. "I want to ask about the oath you took. Do you recall the oath of citizenship?" "Yes, Senator." "It requires you to entirely renounce allegiance to any foreign state. Do you remember that specific part?" "Yes, but—" "And you took an oath of office to defend the Constitution." "Correct?" Kennedy sat down, peering at her. "I want to know if you have honored those oaths." The room's atmosphere shifted from policy to loyalty. Kennedy asked about her meetings with Somali officials. "I meet many officials," she deflected. "Have you met specifically with Somali government officials?" "Yes." "How many times in 5 years?" She hesitated. Kennedy answered for her. 47 times, including the ambassador and foreign minister." "Is that accurate?" "If the records say so." "Did you register as a foreign agent under FARA?" Her lawyer interjected, claiming congressional immunity. Kennedy pressed, "Did you register?" "No, I was conducting diplomatic work." "We will verify that later." 47 meetings, no registration. Kennedy switched to her rhetoric. "In 2019, you said, 'Our homeland is under attack.' You were referring to Somalia. Who is our? I was concerned about casualties. I am asking about your language. You said, 'our homeland' regarding Somalia. Is Somalia your homeland? I am Somali American. That is an evasion. You can only have one political homeland. Which is it? She did not answer clearly. Kennedy played an audio clip from a 2021 fundraiser. Our people back home are suffering, her voice said. Kennedy paused the tape. You said back home in the present tense. Is Somalia still your home? That is a cultural context, her lawyer argued. Kennedy countered, if I called Ireland back home, people would question my loyalty. She said it 43 times. And how many times did you call America home? 0. Kennedy displayed a chart of her voting record. 12 votes regarding Somalia in 5 years. You voted for Somali interests 100% of the time. He detailed a vote against sanctions on terrorists. You were one of 4 to vote no. Why protect terrorists? It was overly broad. It named 15 specific individuals. That is not broad. You voted to protect Somali officials. Kennedy cited another vote against aid oversight. Why oppose transparency for taxpayer money? No good answer existed. Every vote happened within 2 weeks of your meetings with Somali officials. That is coordination. Kennedy moved to finances. Your campaign took $847,000 from a Somali group funded by their government. Did you disclose this foreign connection to voters? Her lawyer claimed legality. Voters have a right to know, Kennedy insisted. He pointed to her husband's consulting fees. His income tripled after you started these meetings. Is there a connection? That is innuendo. It is fact. You also took $340,000 in speaking fees from connected groups. Kennedy lowered his voice. You receive classified briefings on Somalia, correct? Yes. Have you met with Somali officials after these briefings? I cannot discuss classified matters. I am asking about your meetings. Phone logs show you called the Somali ambassador immediately after a briefing on al-Shabaab. I don't recall. It happened 17 times. You receive intelligence, then contact them. That is either bad judgment or espionage. Kennedy then called a witness, Amina Hassan. Amina, a constituent, stood and spoke. I voted for you, but you do not represent us. My family fled Somalia because it failed. We chose America. America is home, Amina declared. You represent the Somali government, not us. Omar had no response. Kennedy summarized the evidence, the quotes, the votes, the money, the meetings. He then asked the final question. If the U.S. and Somalia went to war, who would you want to win? The silence stretched. Omar looked trapped. That is a ridiculous hypothetical, she finally said. It is a basic question of loyalty, Kennedy replied. Which side? She refused to answer, claiming Islamophobia. Kennedy dismissed the religious defense. It is about country, not faith. America or Somalia? Amina stood again. Just say America. Others joined in. Omar stood, furious. I will not participate. Kennedy warned her about the optics of leaving. Watch me, she said. She refused to prove her loyalty and walked out. Kennedy noted her failure to renounce her former allegiance. The hearing ended in chaos, but Kennedy remained calm. The clips went viral immediately. Which side would you want to win became the top trend. Even liberal media questioned her silence. The Somali community in Minnesota released a statement condemning her refusal to choose America. Imams signed a letter expressing their American loyalty. Investigations were launched by the DOJ and Ethics Committee. Polls showed 71% believed she had divided loyalties. A primary challenger, Don Samuels, announced his run. Samuels declared his unqualified love for America. He led in the polls instantly. The squad released a tepid statement. Omar never answered the specific question in her defense. Kennedy told a local reporter that the question was only a trap if one could not answer honestly. 6 months later, Omar lost her primary by 18 points. Her career ended because she could not say 6 words. She could not say she would choose America over Somalia. The lesson was clear. One can be proud of heritage, but a member of Congress must owe allegiance solely to the United States. Her silence told the world everything it needed to know.